Okay, so we've got this deep dive today, looking into some listener-submitted info about small-scale agriculture and how it can help reduce poverty in Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, seems like a really interesting angle, especially given most of the population there depends on farming anyway.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And, they sent over a bunch of material, so hopefully we can really get into the specifics and figure out why this approach is so promising.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll be fascinating to see how it all connects.
So one of the first things that jumps out is this idea of leveraging cash crops that Papua New Guinea is already known for on, like, the global market.
Hmm.
Things like coffee, cocoa, copra, vanilla.
Hmm. Yeah, they've already got that foothold, so it makes sense to build on it.
Exactly. And the sources really emphasize that it's not about replacing the food crops that families rely on. It's about growing these cash crops alongside them so they can kind of have that dual benefit of food security and you bring in more income.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's not an either situation, right? You got to make sure people can eat, but also have the opportunity to earn a decent living. And it seems like Papua New Guinea is actually in a pretty good position to do that. They produce really high quality cocoa, for example,
Oh, yeah, I was reading about that.
but smallholders often struggle to get fair prices for their crops. So there's a lot of potential there if they can, get more support, maybe through cooperatives or something like that, to really unlock that income potential.
Okay, so building on that foundation, the material also talks about the importance of strengthening local farming knowledge, like what farmers already know, and combining that with some of those more modern sustainable techniques, things like crop rotation, organic pest control, intercropping.
Right. Yeah, it's not about replacing their traditional knowledge. It's more like enhancing it, adding in these practices that can help boost their yields without, costing them a ton of money.
Yeah, exactly. And especially in a place like Papua New Guinea with all the different climates and sometimes challenging terrain.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, think about it. Crop rotation alone can do so much for soil health naturally, so they might not need to rely as heavily on expensive fertilizers.
That's a great point. So, okay, they're growing more food, they're bringing in more income, but then there's that crucial piece of getting those harvests to market.
Yes, market access. That's huge.
And the sources talk a lot about improving that through things like cooperatives again, or community transport like shared trucks and having better storage facilities, because obviously growing more is great, but only if you can actually sell it.
Exactly. And I think that's where we can start to see the bigger picture coming together, right? Because you have efficient transport and storage that can dramatically reduce spoilage, which is a big issue.
Right.
And it also brings down those transportation costs.
Yeah.
And that opens up so many more possibilities for farmers, even in remote areas, to connect with buyers, not just in urban centers like Port Moresby, but potentially even internationally, So they're getting a much better return for all their hard work.
Yeah, it's all connected, right? And speaking of connecting, another point that sources bring up is the need for essential tools and resources like basic hand tools, irrigation, and even access to things like microfinance and affordable credit. Because sometimes even small improvements can make a huge difference.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when you think about the sheer amount of work involved in farming, and especially for women farmers who often bear a disproportionate burden, it can be really backbreaking. And that's where something as simple as, a rainwater harvesting system can be a total game changer. It frees up their time and energy for other income generating activities. And then having access to microfinance can give them the resources to invest in those improvements and really scale up what they're doing.
Yeah, it's about giving them the tools to succeed,
Hmm.
basically. And then there's also this focus on building resilience, particularly in the face of climate change. And
Yeah.
the sources talk a lot about incorporating things like drought-resistant crops and agroforestry, integrating trees and shrubs into the farm landscape.
Right. Yeah, it's about thinking long term and making sure these farming practices are sustainable in the face of, you know, droughts, floods, pests, all of that. Because those kinds of environmental challenges can be devastating, especially for small scale farmers.
And when you have something like a drought-resistant crop, that can be the difference between, having a harvest and having nothing, which translates directly to income security.
Exactly. And that kind of stability is crucial for lifting people out of poverty.
So it's fascinating, right? It's not just about growing more food. It's about this whole connected strategy, focusing on income generation, smart crop choices, improving those farming skills with sustainable methods, better access to markets, providing the essential resources, and building resilience against, those environmental challenges. And it's all happening within these existing rural communities.
It's like creating this whole ecosystem of support where small scale farmers have the opportunity to build sustainable livelihoods, and in turn, they're contributing to their own well being and the overall economic growth of the country.
Yeah, it's a really insightful look at the potential here. And it makes you think about the interconnectedness of everything, those local farming practices and the global markets. And when we prioritize empowering these farmers, what kind of impact does that have on a larger scale? Lots to consider.
Definitely a lot to think about there.
Thanks for joining me for this deep dive.
Yeah, it was great to explore this with you.